That was not what I was expecting, but holy shit. So what this finale was saying is that Shauna is going to team up with her crazy lesbian lover and go head to head with another crazy lesbian and her even crazier heterosexual friend, whilst evil Frodo watches from the shadows. Season 4 is going to be break the meter kinds of crazy. It's going to be everything Killing Eve should have been. Lesbian nature is healing. Welcome back, citizen detectives. In today's video, we're just going to be discussing thoughts and theories for the finale of Yellowjackets Season 3. It's our last thoughts and theories video for this season. It must have been love, but it's over now. It must have been gay, but we lost it somehow. So let's start with Lottie. R.I.P. my sweet, beautiful, crazy wizard woman. So the episode begins with teen Lottie dreaming. And in this dream, we see her encounter the Antler Queen. We can't see who the Antler Queen is, but my guess is it's her adult self. Especially seeing as the scene flickers between her standing opposite the Antler Queen and a visual of the antlers positioned behind her. There have been a lot of visual clues throughout all 3 seasons that Lottie has some connection to the Antler Queen. And if anybody has any theories about this, please do let me know in the comments. There's been a lot of discussion about different versions of reality and alternate timelines this season. So it could be that in a different version of the wilderness timeline, Lottie is the Antler Queen. It may even be a clue that Lottie is supposed to be the true Antler Queen. Personally, I'm a bit skeptical about that, given that Shauna also fits the role of Antler Queen incredibly well for multiple reasons. I've shared in previous videos that I thought Shauna would be the Antler Queen, mostly because she's an alpha figure, but also because, and I forgot to mention this in previous videos, and of course a lot of people have picked up on this now, but if we go back to the Yellowjackets poster with Jackie's face, a reflection of the Antler Queen can be seen in her eye. And this was a huge clue that Shauna was going to be the Antler Queen because Jackie and Shauna are intrinsically connected, and in a lot of ways their relationship sits at the core of this show. So it makes the most sense that Jackie would be looking at Shauna as the Antler Queen. That said, Lottie certainly has some kind of connection to the Antler Queen. I'm just not sure what. I mean, it could be to do with the fact that both Lottie and Shauna are the most devoted to the wilderness, be it for different reasons. But again, I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments. Interestingly, we also see a brief visual of Lottie's face overlapping the burning cabin. So could this be a clue that she was the one who set it ablaze? Well, I did some digging, and going back to episode 4 of this season, I noticed there's an interesting transition sequence between the scene of Lottie apologising in the mirror to the scene of teen Misty talking to Lottie about the cabin fire in Ben's trial. And this could suggest Lottie started the fire, but it could also suggest that there is a connection between the fire and the person Lottie was practicing an apology for. And this person could be Tai, because if we remember, Tai met up with Lottie on the day of her death. And there have also been consistent fire visuals and associations with Tai's character all season. In this scene, Misty also brings up that throughout history, there have been many examples of people who are not in favour of certain belief systems burning places to the ground. And since we know that Teen Tai was skeptical of the whole it thing, this may offer an explanation as to why she started it, if it didn't just happen when she was sleepwalking. I mean, there's certainly more to the story here, but that's my best guess. But again, I'd love to know what you guys make of this. Then we see teen Lottie visiting adult Lottie in the morgue. Now, I'm not 100% sure if this is still a part of Lottie's dream or if this is supposed to be their post-death connection scene. But anyway, teen Lottie tells adult Lottie, "Do you remember what we promised? It's time to meet her." And adult Lottie finds herself at the location of her death, asking, "Are you there?" Now, if this is part of a dream, teen Lottie could be referring to meeting Callie, especially as there are sounds of a baby crying in the background. And we know from Lottie's conversation with Callie this episode, and her obsession with Shauna's baby in the wilderness, that those baby sounds are most likely related to Shauna's babies, and Callie in particular. It's also interesting to note here in relation to the baby sounds that Lottie foresaw this location in her baptism or christening scene, because the majority of baptisms are performed on children. And the exchange that takes place between Callie and Lottie about the wilderness is not dissimilar to one person trying to make another person a member of a certain faith or belief system. If this sequence is not a part of teen Lottie's dream, and it is the post-death connection scene, then the her that teen Lottie is referring to could be a number of people. Personally, I think she's referring to Nat, because firstly, Nat is also dead, so it makes sense a dead Lottie would be meeting another dead person. Secondly, the episode is titled Full Circle, and just before the opening credits, Lottie asks, "Are you there?" And just before the end credits, Nat is on the phone, also asking, "Are you there? And can anyone hear me?" So this connects the two of them. And thirdly, there have been so many hints that Nat and Lottie have some kind of sacred connection. And yes, it's a connection that hasn't really been explored in depth yet. Going by the scenes that they've had together so far and all of the clues, we know it's an important one, so it's entirely plausible. The Nat is the her that Lottie was talking about. Now, what's interesting is we don't see teen and adult Lottie on a plane, and I'd love to know people's interpretations of this. I've read some theories where people think the death flight represents the characters heading back to the wilderness, and Lottie doesn't get one because she never really left. Which is really interesting, and I wondered if that plane journey represents that their lives figuratively ended when they came back from the wilderness. But either way, it's notable that Lottie didn't get a plane scene. We know that Lottie's truly dead because Simone Kessel confirmed it in an interview. However, the finale was released just before Easter Sunday, which is all about Jesus' resurrection. And there have been some parallels between Lottie and Jesus in the show. For example, with Lottie walking on pit trap water last episode. In fact, a lot of the characters who died have had associations with Jesus or Christianity this season. For example, Ben being tied in the shape of a cross, and Mari having holes in her hands. So who knows what the writers are planning? Of course, the rebirth and resurrection theme could also be related to the fact that all of these surviving adult characters are currently going through a transformation of the self, and rebirth as characters too. Anyway, moving on, we discover that Callie is the one who killed Lottie, which Misty figures out from the picture of Callie on Lottie's clone phone, and the fact that mothers and daughters can share mitochondrial DNA. And Misty confronting Callie prompts her into confessing. Now, this slightly changes certain theories around Walter, because one of the Walter theories for this season is that he was framing Shauna with the DNA. However, now we know that he wasn't framing Shauna in the sense that she had nothing to do with it whatsoever. It makes his actions seem slightly less suspicious. Of course, it's still a possibility that Walter knew or suspected it was Callie, especially because of that visual greater connection last episode, and was trying to blame it on Shauna anyway, but we'll get back to Walter later. Now, Callie trying to pass Lottie's death off as an accident to Misty explains the accidental aspect of Lottie's death that was sprinkled in there this season. However, whether Callie is telling the truth about this is up for debate, because she very purposefully shoves Lottie down a flight of stairs with an angry look in her eyes. And interestingly, she reacts in this way after being compared to her mother, which kind of proves Lottie's point that she's just like her. That said, at the same time, Lottie was scaring Callie, and Callie may have acted on an emotional impulse, not intending to kill her. And it also seemed as though she was upset and remorseful after it happened. So it's not clear cut. Now, before Lottie is pushed, she talks to Callie about it and tells her that Shauna doesn't love her because she sees it growing in Callie and is jealous. But we know this isn't true because in season 2, episode 7, Shauna explains to Lottie why she keeps Callie at arm's length. That it's out of fear that Callie is going to die and she's scared of getting attached to someone she could potentially lose. Which makes perfect sense considering everything that Shauna went through in the wilderness. wilderness. And this highlights what a manipulative character Lottie is. What she's doing here is planting seeds of strife, which I feel may sprout in season 4 with Callie pitting herself against her mother. Lottie also tells Callie that she's just like her mother but more, which insinuates that Callie is capable of being even more ruthless and deranged than Shauna is. And this perception of Callie being just as awful as her mother has been mentioned more than once this season, and I suspect that again this is a hint that her storyline in season 4 is going to go to a very dark place. Lottie also tells Callie that it is why, and I quote, "we did what we did, killing and hunting each other, thrilling, terrible things." And this mention of thrilling parallels Shauna referring to her time out in the wilderness as fun and a thrill. And this establishes a connection between Shauna and Lottie as two characters who gain some kind of enjoyment from the awful things that happened in the wilderness, which possibly explains their joint Antler Queen theme. I think the wilderness being a thrill is an interesting concept. And of course it's subjective to each character, but a lot of them had reason to cherish that period of their life as well as wanting to forget it. Tai got to be with her true love, Shauna got to feel powerful, Misty got to feel needed, and Lottie got to live out her delusions in peace. They were also a group of young women living in a place that was not only free from patriarchy, but free from laws and societal expectations in general. They were truly free out there in every sense of the word. And it's interesting to think about what that might have meant to each character. Callie then confesses everything to Jeff and tells him that she thinks that she's just as messed up as Shauna, which Jeff denies, and he reframes what happened with Lottie as justifiable and as an accident. Now, I think when Jeff tells Callie, "I'm sorry that I didn't protect you from her," it has a double meaning in that he's talking about both Lottie and Shauna, which is very revealing of just how damaged his perception of Shauna is at this point. And seeing Callie this way is the final straw for him. Cue the separation theories coming true as they pack their shit and peace out. Moving on to Shauna this episode. Oh boy. Let's start with teen Shauna. The first point of interest is that Shauna figures out that Tai and Van are rigging the cards, and she's paranoid that they're setting her up to pick the queen, and so moves, resulting in Mari being chosen instead. And Mari being hunted and eaten is a full circle moment, which connects back to Shauna chasing her down at the beginning of the season and biting her. In response to Shauna's gloating, Mari tells her that she deserves everything that is coming to her, which, if the foreshadowing theme continues in season 4, is highly suggestive that Shauna has some awful things coming her way, far beyond being abandoned by her family. Now, whilst there were numerous clues that Mari was Pit Girl early on this season, which we've discussed a few times, a lot of people were skeptical because of the decoy comment Mari made. But as it turns out, it was a decoy, just not in the way people initially thought. Interestingly, during the hunt, when Mari runs into Lottie, I took Lottie telling Mari that she's been here before as an indirect warning to avoid the pit. But because Mari doesn't believe in it or Lottie, she doesn't want to listen to what Lottie is saying and runs to her death. And this concept of Lottie indirectly warning or trying to save people from their death connects back to previous scenes. For example, her parents paying attention to her when she was screaming in the car instead of driving ahead, which saved their lives. It's also interesting how this episode reframes a lot of what we saw in the season 1 pilot. For example, a lot of us assumed that the Pit Girl scene was a portrayal of how much the girls had descended into depravity. But this episode reveals that it was actually part of a plan to help them get rescued. And in fact, some of the girls were visibly upset about Mari's death and had taken steps to try and save her. And whilst I think it does take away from some of the horror element in season 1, it's one of the more interesting twists this season, because what does it say about us as an audience that some people wanted the girls to lose their humanity and kind of fully embrace that barbaric nature? You tell me. There's something about young women and horror which is really kind of fascinating to unpack. Another point of interest about Mari is that she injures her foot before she dies, because this connects to Edwin and Van also having a foot injury before their deaths, which in turn connects to the theme of 3 this season. And alongside this, I actually left this in my extra notes for last episode, but early on in the season, Shauna makes up a lie about having a podiatrist appointment to Misty, and Shauna faking a foot problem could relate to the fact that Melissa almost killed her, or could be a clue that there will be a fake death in her storyline at some point in the future. Shauna keeping Mari's hair as some kind of trophy also highlights her ruthless and disturbed nature. If we think about the kinds of people who keep trophies of their victims, the first people we often think about are serial killers, and according to Google, they do this to commemorate their conquest and keep it as a visual reward of their dominance. So this visual says quite a lot about just how deranged Shauna is. Another point of interest is that Shauna and Tai have a heated exchange during the hunt, where Shauna tries to threaten or intimidate Tai over the rigged cards, but eventually backs down. And I think Shauna backs down for 2 reasons. The first being that Tai is a strong character, both physically and emotionally. She's not easy to physically dominate or to intimidate. Tai also has a side to her which is just as ruthless and deranged as Shauna, which Shauna recognizes in this moment, aka other Tai makes a guest appearance. And secondly, Shauna and Tai have a history of being close and supporting one another. So there are emotional layers to their relationship, which likely factor into this moment. And I think this moment is relevant to the adult timeline because it highlights that Tai is a match for Shauna, and if they're going to go head to head, it's not going to be an easy win for anyone. Moving on to Shauna and Jackie in this episode. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds to me like the person who wakes Shauna from her sleep on the morning that snow has covered the ground of the camp is Jackie, which would fit given the associations between Jackie and snow, and later on when Shauna and Travis are having a back and forth. Travis drunkenly tells Shauna, "None of this is real. Don't you ever wonder whose reality we're in? I'm pretty sure some of my thoughts are Harvey's thoughts. My favourite thoughts are Jackie's. The slumber party makeout, the jealousy, the betrayal." And this speech is interesting for a couple of reasons. The first being his insinuation that different realities are connected to different characters, and that he himself switches between people, notably people who have been physically consumed by him. And this could be the ramblings of a drunk, but it could also be yet another clue, which adds weight to the theory that there are multiple realities, or an alternate timeline that's going to be revealed to us at some point, which we were discussing just last episode. I mean, it's also possible his comments may just relate to characters having selective memory, or remembering different versions of the same event, or something along those lines. But let me know your thoughts on this, because the make-believe theme has been very consistent this season. Secondly, Travis's mention of Jackie, jealousy, betrayal, and slumber party makeouts is interesting because we know at least 2 out of 3 of those things ring true to Shauna and Jackie's history. However, the mention of slumber party makeouts is a revelation. And is this something that Travis witnessed happen between the 2 of them at some point? Is this something he is assuming from having observed Shauna and Jackie? Which isn't totally crazy given that Tai and Van were also making jokes about Shauna having a crush on Jackie. Is it something Ghost Jackie told him? Is it just drunk ramblings? I don't know that I take his comment as a confirmation of Shauna and Jackie being physically involved, but if it is true, and like I said, 2 out of 3 things that he's claimed were true, it certainly reframes a lot of their scenes and conversations together in season 1. And either way, it's been placed in the dialogue for a reason and can be added to the gigantic mountain of subtext and suggestion that has been piling up with Shauna and Jackie's relationship since season 1. Moving on to adult Shauna. The first point of interest is the scene with the microwave beeping. It beeps 3 3 times in a row, which connects to the theme of 3 this season, but the beeping also connects to the beeping of the scanned products in Shauna's grocery store dream, and that beeping is also mirrored by the beeping of Van's monitor in hospital. So could this beeping be a clue that Shauna is going to end up in a critical state at some point? This theory also connects to the Shauna fake or near death theory we've been discussing for this season, which I thought would happen in the finale. I mean, I guess it kind of did with Melissa almost killing teen Shauna, so maybe that was it. But still, it's also potentially a clue for where Shauna's storyline is headed in season 4. The second point of interest is the Throwing Muses Hunk Papa album shirt Shauna is wearing. Because yes, this is a band shirt, but the term Hunk Papa refers to a band of the Lakota people who are a Native American people and means head of the circle or campers at the horn / entrance, which has obvious connections to teen Shauna. And interestingly, the Hunk Papa held a specific role within the Lakota social structure where they were known as the first to arrive and the last to leave during council meetings. So this shirt could be a clue that Shauna really will be the last one standing or the last one to die. The next point of interest is that after Shauna reads Melissa's letter, she sits down and starts writing, and I've seen people speculate that she's writing a tell-all book as revenge. And hey, those people could be right. But personally, I don't think that's the case. I think Shauna returning to writing things down is representative of her reverting fully back to her wilderness mindset. The episode is titled Full Circle, and this season began with Shauna writing her thoughts down, so it's fitting it would end with her doing the same thing. Interestingly, Shauna writes down, "I've tried for years to remember what happened out there, to understand why it seemed like I couldn't remember so much of it, why none of us could. I'm finally starting to realize we can't remember it, because at some point we became so alive in that place that we lost our capacity for self-reflection. The trauma people say survivors forget things to protect themselves because they are so horrible, but I think that we won't or can't remember it clearly because we recognize deep down we were having so much fun. That's the terrible truth we left out there, buried along with the people we called our friends. Except it's all coming back to me now. The danger, the thrill, the person I was back then. Not a wife or a mother. I was a warrior. I was a queen. I let all of it slip away from me. It's time to start taking it back." And this is very revealing that Shauna is about to reclaim her power and fully embrace her ruthless nature once more. Notably, Shauna also mentions how she and the others had trouble remembering their time out in the wilderness, which connects to Van telling Ty that the mind forgets to protect itself. But even more interestingly, Shauna suggests that they don't dare to remember it because deep down, they enjoyed the terrible things that were happening, which of course connects to Lottie's conversation with Callie, where she referred to that period as thrilling. Again, I think this concept of not remembering or hazy memories connects to the theme of make-believe and multiple realities this season, because it's clear that each character remembers their time in the wilderness in a different way, therefore creating different realities, perhaps even making things up in their head to justify certain things or to cope. In other words, creating different realities. But I'd love to know your interpretations and thoughts on Shauna's speech down in the comments. Moving on to Shauna and Melissa this episode. The costume department were really driving home that these two are strongly tied together, that they're two sides of the same coin, and that Melissa has a connection to Jackie. Firstly, despite the fact that Shauna and Melissa are broken up, Shauna is still wearing Melissa's sheath and Melissa is wearing Shauna's blanket. Interestingly, she's also wearing an airplane belt around this blanket, which, as we know what airplane journeys represent, could be a clue that Shauna may have some connection to Melissa's death. But that aside, Melissa and Shauna holding on to a piece of each other, despite their fallout, represents lingering feelings. And alongside this, Melissa is also wearing a headband, which is similar to what Shauna wore in season 2. And Shauna has her hair in a braid, which is similar to the braid Melissa wore. And once again, this portrays how these two characters are one in the same. And whilst it's true that the girls all swap clothes from time to time and so on, it's also true that the costume costumes they wear often hold meaning at the same time. Melissa is also seen wearing the rabbit mask that we've previously seen Shauna wearing, and we know that rabbits have an association with Jackie. So this is another clue that Melissa's relationship with Shauna is tied to Jackie. And interestingly, in Shauna's house, we see rabbit ornaments which look like a baby and parent rabbit and two affectionate rabbits. And this suggests that Shauna's marriage to Jeff and Callie is also tied into Jackie. And it's no coincidence that both of Shauna's romantic relationships have visual associations to the girl she had a homoerotic friendship with. Shauna is also seen wearing a hat mask, and of course, baseball caps have a heavy association with Melissa. And this once again portrays that Shauna is as much Melissa as Melissa is Shauna. Interestingly, during the card draw, Shauna picks the 2 of clubs, which mirrors her picking the 2 of clubs in the season 2 finale. And if we remember in episode 5, Melissa also picked the 2 of clubs. And as I explained in my review of episode 5, in cartomancy, the 2 of clubs is associated with partnerships and relationships, a meeting of minds and the duality of choices and decisions. So both of them picking this card is a huge clue that they are bound together and going to pair up once more in the adult timeline. Another point of interest is that Melissa tries to kill Shauna by suffocating her, which explains Shauna's snap bracelet hallucination earlier on in the season, and the fact that Melissa is wearing a rabbit mask whilst this happens also connects to Jackie being the one to place the bracelet around Shauna's neck. In other words, Shauna's gay situationship with Melissa, stemming from her repressed feelings for Jackie, nearly killed her. But Melissa isn't able to go through with actually killing Shauna, and this is significant because we know Melissa is capable of killing another person because she kills Van, even though she had the option to get away. And this suggests Shauna means too much to Melissa for her to do it. It's also significant that Shauna doesn't immediately seize the chance to kill Melissa after Melissa lets her go. I feel like if this was anyone else, Shauna may not have walked away. And we've seen this theme of one hurting the other, but not actually killing them all throughout this season, with teen Shauna not directly shooting at Melissa, adult Shauna turning up at Melissa's house and choosing to humiliate her instead of killing her, and now teen Melissa suffocating Shauna but being unable to actually kill her. And this theme suggests that they can't go through with it because deep down, there's a part of them that cares too much to do it. And considering how ruthless both these characters are, that says quite a lot about their bond. It's also interesting that Shauna tells Melissa the hunt is over, and Melissa responds with, "Not for me, it's not." Because this dialogue has a double meaning in that Melissa is not over their relationship. In relation to this, when it's revealed that the group want to have another hunt to offer up someone they cherish, Shauna very briefly looks back at Melissa, and the camera focuses on Melissa and then back to her. And this suggests that Shauna's thoughts went directly to Melissa in that moment, and that she was concerned over potentially losing someone she cares about. Now, all of this points to Shauna and Melissa essentially having an emotional investment in each other, and that's significant for the adult timeline because, as I've said before, the storyline of two characters who deep down care about each other looks very different from the storyline of two characters who do not. And now Shauna is in hot water with Misty, Ty, and potentially Walter. This is more relevant than ever because someone who cares about Shauna is someone who will have her back. And if the Princess Bride theory continues to ring true in season 4, Melissa will likely try and protect Shauna. It's too soon to say whether the Thelma and Louise, Misty and Shauna theory was wrong, or whether it will involve Melissa and Shauna instead, as we don't know what's going to happen with Walter yet. If Misty finds out he's been scheming against her and her friends, she may still choose to save Shauna at the last minute and go on the run with her. The last point of interest about Shauna and Melissa is that Shauna discovers Melissa's note under the fridge. And it's interesting that she only starts crying after reading this, and not when she had discovered her family had left her. But the letter is about self-forgiveness and moving on, and this provokes a very human moment in Shauna. That suggests she's not totally devoid of feeling, or just a two-dimensional, cold-blooded figure. And from the visuals of her crying, having flashbacks, and ripping the letter up, and washing it away. It read to me that Shauna can't bear to even start unpacking her behaviour or dealing with the mountain of repression that's built up over the years. Instead, she doubles down and leans into her ruthless teenage mindset as a coping mechanism. She never allowed herself to truly process her emotions in the wilderness, and she isn't able to do that now. Moving on to the mysterious Queen of Berries herself, Akila. And this episode left me with a lot of questions about her. We see Akila follow Lottie into the caves and learn she was the one responsible for killing the animals as part of the plan to arrange a hunt to distract Shauna, which of course connects back to her vision of the dead animals. In this scene, Akila is incredibly upset with Lottie, blames her for everything, and picks up a rock, presumably with the intent of striking her. However, the scene cuts away before we can see what Akila decides to do. Now, as far as I can see, Akila is not back at the camp after the hunt, or at least we don't see any clear shots of her. Now, it's possible that I missed something, so if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments. But if Akila is indeed missing, it's possible that her and Lottie got into a fight where Lottie defended herself, possibly leaving Akila hurt or dead, which would link back to Akila's cave hallucination, where the alpaca told her that everything with teeth bites and will defend itself. It's also possible that she didn't attack Lottie and just chose to stay in the caves and go solo, and it could be that she stays in the caves and then gets rescued separately from the group and is another surprise survivor. It's worth noting that after this episode, the snap bracelet in the cave hallucinations is more or less confirmed as representative of Melissa, since Melissa killed Van and tried to kill Shauna. But since the snap bracelet doesn't harm Akila, does that mean that she was or will be somehow spared by Melissa? Or could it mean that Melissa will get to her next season? There are quite a few possibilities, but please let me know your thoughts and theories on Akila down in the comments, because I'm curious to see what other people think. Moving on to adult Ty. Now, Ty and Shauna take Van's body to be buried out in the woods, and I assume that this is because they don't want the police involved, since if Melissa ends up being arrested, they would probably end up going down with her. And interestingly, in the burial scene, Ty says, "I'm done forgetting, I'm going to remember all of it, all of you, and all of me." Now, this is interesting because it connects to what adult Shauna was talking about this episode, where she explains how the survivors have difficulty remembering certain things, and we know that other Ty in particular will often do disturbing things and then forget that she did them. So Ty saying that she's going to remember everything could be a clue that she's about to finally stop repressing things and face up to what she did and who she is, which could potentially signal the end of other Ty as this separate personality. And this goes back to the many conversations we've had about other Ty. I've said in the past that I viewed other Ty as Ty herself simply just regressing, and not necessarily as a separate personality inside of her. But I'd love to know your thoughts and theories on other Ty down in the comments. Ty then eats Van's heart, which circles back to season 2, where Travis ate Harvey's heart to honour him. And it also connects to the kitchen is the heart of the family sign, where Van's death took place. A couple of people predicted that Ty would eat Van's heart in the comments section for last episode. So well done, citizen detectives. I think it's fitting that Ty did this because so much of her romance with Van was forged in the wilderness and in sacrifice. It's also a theme in this show that people physically consume the people they love. And alongside this, it also portrays how Ty is firmly back in her wilderness mindset too. Now, Ty blames Shauna for Van's death, and if we remember last episode, Melissa was stirring the pot between Ty and Shauna and planting seeds of doubt. And it seems like Melissa's words have resonated with Ty, and this situation is the final straw for her. Ty meets up with Misty to discuss the situation, and it's interesting that she brings up not only Van's death in relation to Shauna, but Nat's death too. Because Ty, knowing that the mention of Nat was going to strike a chord with Misty, highlights the importance of that relationship. Tai also mentions that Shauna thrives on the destruction she causes, and that she forgot Shauna was like that for the longest time, which explains a lot of why Tai seemed closer to Shauna or spent more time with her in the adult timeline than the others. But as I said earlier, Tai and Shauna also have a very complicated history. Yes, there's a lot of trauma and bad feeling from their time in the wilderness, but they were also close at one point, and Tai for the most part always had Shauna's back. So I think there's always been layers to their relationship. Tai then says to Misty if we keep letting this slide, she's going to end up being the last one standing, which connects back to Shauna's conversation with Melissa, where she said the only way to truly be safe is to be the last one left. And then Tai says, I don't want that, do you? To which Misty replies, no, I definitively do not. Now, the word definitively is a point of interest here, because definitively means in a way that is complete, final, or absolute. And I wonder if this is a hint that Shauna's death would mean the conclusion of the show, and could even be a hint that season 4 may be the last season of the show if Shauna dies in it. We also see Walter is watching this conversation unfold from his car with Raining Blood by Slayer playing in the background. And what's interesting about this is this is an odd song choice from a man who presented himself as loving musical theatre, which suggests he created that persona to be as appealing to Misty as possible, and B, Jeff Hanneman, who wrote Raining Blood, has explained that the song is about a guy who's in purgatory because he was cast out of heaven and is waiting for revenge and wants to F that place up. Now, both of these things add weight to the theory that Walter is not who he says he is, and that he's seeking revenge on the Yellowjackets. What's potentially a fresh clue is that this song suggests that whatever the Yellowjackets did ended up destroying Walter's life and could be the reason he is living under a fake name. I also think it's interesting that Walter is manipulating Misty, which relates back to the Sherlock and Bored Moriarty comment, because Walter could easily try and kill the Yellowjackets if all he wanted was revenge. Yet instead he's using Misty to get at them, which implies that there's something more to his revenge plan, and there's a motive of mental stimulation involved in his methods. If we remember, just like Misty, Walter is symbolized by a cat, and we know that cats like to stalk and play with their prey. Moving on to Natalie Scatorcio, our cinnamon roll saint. Now, points of interest about Nat this episode are firstly, the contrast between her as a saintly hero figure and Shauna as a demonic villain figure being incredibly stark, and this is complemented by the season starting with Nat as the group leader in spring, with warm weather and good feelings, and ending with Shauna as the group leader in winter, with cold weather and hard times. Secondly, as discussed earlier, this episode creates a connection between Nat and Lottie with the opening and the ending. But there was also a further visual connection with Nat choosing the Ace of Hearts in the card draw, which mirrors Lottie choosing it in the season 2 finale. Now, in Cartomancy, the Ace of Hearts represents the House of True Heart, and it can also often stand for good luck, and both of these things are relevant to Nat's arc this episode. Interestingly, it can also stand for a breakthrough in feelings, new relationships, and a declaration of love. Now, we were discussing the clues that Nat is in fact bisexual and that she may get closer to Lottie last episode. And this is yet another clue that there is going to be something more to their relationship. And I know that everyone thinks it's a delusional lesbian tinfoil hat theory, but the clues are there. I scream as they drag me away. And thirdly, Nat punches Misty in the face after discovering she has the transponder. But despite her anger, keeps it a secret, likely because rescue is the priority, which begins Misty's devotion to her. And this reframes the shot of Misty smiling in the pilot, which we initially assumed to be related to sadistic purposes, as actually because her plan with Nat had worked. Even more interestingly, as other people have pointed out, the position of the crack in Misty's glasses matches that of the symbol, which definitely blew my mind a little bit. As for theories about season 4, a lot of the theories that we have discussed for this season and that we thought may happen in the finale can actually just be transferred to season 4. For the teen timeline, I don't have any clue as to what's going to happen. Apart from Shauna, Melissa, and Hannah being involved in some kind of drama, we know that Melissa gets close enough to Hannah for Hannah to tell Melissa where she hid the tape. And Shauna playing with Hannah's hair indicates that at some point she's probably going to be the one to kill her. We also know that there are more deaths to come in both the wilderness timeline and the post-rescue timeline. But as it stands, there are endless possibilities about why and how those deaths happen. For the adult timeline, oh boy. To be succinct, the clues from this season heavily suggest that Shauna and Melissa are going to pair up. There's also a possibility that Melissa gets tortured and will be assumed dead again. There are clues that Shauna is going to discover that Walter has been meddling in her life, that she's going to steal his boat and possibly also have a fake death or near-death experience. Similar to Melissa, which makes sense given that they're mirror characters. Misty and Ty are clearly going to go head-to-head with Shauna and possibly Melissa, but it's also likely that Walter is going to interfere. And if Misty ends up working this out, who knows which way she's going to go. Callie is likely going to go full-on psycho and possibly go head-to-head with Shauna as well. There's also a strong possibility that Callie is going to kill Jeff, just as the prophecies foretold. But most importantly, my favorite theory is that Misty is going to jump out of a window to avoid an explosion or fire, Bruce Willis style. That said, my theories are not always right, and I could be wrong about absolutely everything. But let me know your theories down in the comments, because people will often post their theories and turn out to be right. And that's because they are citizen detectives. Okay guys, let me know your thoughts and theories on the finale down in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe for instant disappointment, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.